I worked at a small grocery store in the suburbs, often working the night shift because no one wanted to take the schedule. The place was located on a hidden corner of the street, surrounded by only a few scattered houses. At night, the whole area was plunged into darkness, with only the fluorescent lights of the store shining out, creating a lonely and creepy feeling. On normal nights, the store was deserted, with only a few customers stopping by to buy small items. I usually killed time by cleaning the shelves or sitting at the cashier, scrolling through my phone. Everything was normal until that night. It was around 2 a.m. I was checking the inventory at the back corner of the store when I heard the doorbell ring. I looked up and saw a man standing at the entrance. He was wearing a long black coat, his hat pulled down to cover most of his face, revealing only his strangely bright eyes staring at me. Without saying a word, he slowly walked inside, staggering like a drunk, but not making any sound. This made me shiver. I tried to stay calm and politely greeted, "Hello, can I help you?" But he didn't answer, just walked along the shelves, his head tilted slightly as if searching for something. After walking around the store without touching anything, he stopped in the middle of the aisle, turned around, and looked straight at me. His bright eyes were unblinking, staring at me so intently that I felt a chill run down my spine. Suddenly, he started to chuckle, the hoarse laughter echoing throughout the store, echoing in the quiet space, becoming even more haunting. Then he started to move towards me, step by step, slowly but firmly. I instinctively backed away until my back hit the shelf behind me. "What do you need?" I tried to keep my voice calm, but it trembled uncontrollably. He didn't answer, just standing a few feet away from me, his face blurred under the fluorescent lights. Then he spoke, whispering softly like a breeze. "Did you see them?" I frowned, not understanding what he was saying. "See who?" His eyes suddenly became lifeless. His mouth curved into a crooked smile, and he whispered, "The people who still stand behind you every night." My chest tightened, a cold feeling ran down my spine. I turned around, but behind me was only an empty shelf, not a single person. When I turned around, the man was gone. I searched the store but found no trace of him. The door was still locked, and the doorbell never rang again. How could he have left without leaving a trace? I checked the security camera, my heart pounding as I replayed the scene of him entering the store. But the screen showed no trace of him. The door opened by itself, but no one entered. I saw myself talking, stepping back and looking scared, but on the screen, I was just standing there, facing the empty air. At this point, I couldn't take it anymore. Quickly turned off the screen and called the manager. I told him the whole story, but he just laughed, telling me I must have been dizzy from staying up so late. The next day, I quit my job. I didn't dare go back to that store. But the story wasn't over yet. A few weeks later, I accidentally heard from a former colleague that there had been an accident right in front of the store many years ago. A man was hit by a car and died on the spot. It was said that he wandered around every night looking for something, but never found it. Even now, whenever I recall his lifeless eyes, I still feel a chill down my spine and swear that I will never work the night shift in any store again. If you think working the night shift is just a job, think again. Because sometimes you never know what you'll encounter when the lights dim and darkness falls. I was delivering for a small pizza shop in town. The night shift was always my job because no one wanted to drive around at 11 p.m., especially in remote areas. But the night shift tips were always better for me, so I took the job without complaint. That night, like any other, I received my last order at 11 p.m. The address was a house on the edge of town, near a long-abandoned wasteland. The road to it was dark and deserted, with only a few dim street lights casting a yellow glow on the ground. I didn't think much of it, just wanted to finish delivering the order and go home to rest. Little did I know that that night would change my thoughts about delivery work forever. I drove along the deserted road, flanked by tall grasses that swayed in the night wind. The sky was pitch black, with no stars, only a faint moonlight peeking through the gray clouds. Finally, I saw the house in the distance. It stood alone in the middle of the wasteland, old and dilapidated, as if it had been forgotten for a long time. Grass grew wild around the yard, and the windows were black like empty eye sockets staring out. The strange thing was there were no lights inside. Everything was dark. I looked at the address on the receipt again, confirming that I was in the right place. But why were there no lights? Who would order pizza and not wait at home to pick it up? I hesitated for a few seconds before deciding to get out of the car. I had to deliver the order to get a tip, and I didn't want to have to go back to the store to explain why the delivery wasn't made. I walked to the front door, the cold wind blowing past me, making me shiver. The coldness of the house seemed to seep into my bones, but I tried to ignore it. I knocked 3 times. "Pizza, is anyone home?" There was no answer. I leaned over to look through the window, but it was completely dark inside, not a single light shining through. I was about to turn away when the door suddenly opened, making a chilling, creaking sound. In front of me was a thin man, his skin as pale as if he hadn't seen the sun for years. He wore an old gray sweater, his sunken eyes staring at me unblinkingly. "Here's your pizza," I said, trying to keep my voice calm even as my heart pounded in my chest. He didn't answer, just stood there staring at me for a few seconds, then slowly reached out to take the pizza box. When his hand touched the box, I felt a chilling cold, as if he had just stepped out of a freezer. The air became so heavy and stuffy that I found it hard to breathe. I quickly said goodbye and turned around to walk quickly back to the car. I had just opened the car door when I heard a voice calling from behind. "Wait, you forgot the tip." I turned around and saw him standing right in front of the door, his pale face standing out in the dim moonlight. His eyes were empty and cold like those of a corpse. I stammered my thanks, even though my heart just wanted to get out of this place as soon as possible. He slowly approached, holding a folded bill in his hand. I reached out to take it, but as soon as my fingers touched the bill, I felt a chill run down my spine. Suddenly, he grabbed my hand, the grip so strong that it hurt. I jumped back, my eyes looking at his face in horror. His face was deformed. His skin was flabby as if melting, revealing patches of white bone underneath. The sunken eyes were now reduced to 2 black eye sockets, deep and dark as if sucking all the light around them. I screamed in panic and wrenched my hand away from his cold hand, running towards the car. I rushed into the car, locked the door, and started the engine frantically. Looking through the rearview mirror, I saw him still standing there, staring at me with his 2 deep black eye sockets. His mouth curled into a strange smile, a twisted smile that was terrifying. I drove furiously down the deserted road, sweating profusely despite the cold outside. My heart still pounded in my chest as I remembered his empty eyes and his face melting in horror. When I reached the main road, I glanced back at the bill still in my hand. It was cold, emitting a strange chill that made me shiver. I unfolded the bill and felt my blood freeze as I saw the words scrawled in black ink. "Thanks for stopping by. See you soon." I threw the bill on the floor of the car, stepped on the gas harder, and sped toward the lights of the town as if trying to escape the terrible nightmare I had just experienced. That night, I quit my job immediately, and I swore that I would never accept another order from that house again. I worked at a small gas station on a deserted highway, far from the nearest town. The night shift from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. was always my job, because no one wanted to face the cold silence and darkness of the place at night. I had been working here for over a year and had almost no major incidents, except for a few drunks stopping by to fill up or buy more beer. But that night was different, a night I would never forget. My shift started as usual. I checked the shelves, cleaned the cash register, and made sure everything was tidy. The night wind blew through the cracks in the door, making a soft but creepy sound. That night, the sky was pitch black, no moon, no stars. Only the flashing neon lights outside the gas station illuminated the dark, quiet space. I sat behind the counter, sipping my coffee and yawning, trying to stay awake so as not to fall asleep. Around 2 a.m., as I was staring at my phone screen to kill time, I heard footsteps crunching on the gravel outside the door. I looked up and saw a man entering the gas station. He was wearing a long black coat. The hood pulled up so I couldn't see his face clearly. His tall, thin body exuded an indescribable gloom, as if darkness was enveloping him. He didn't say a word, just stood silently in front of the store, his eyes staring at me through the transparent glass. A cold feeling spread throughout my body, as if the temperature in the room had suddenly dropped. I reluctantly smiled and greeted him, but he still stood there, not moving, not saying a word. The air in the gas station became heavy, stifling to the point of being hard to breathe. After a few tense seconds, he turned and walked towards the gas station, stood next to pump number 4, and continued to stare at me. I swallowed, my heart pounding in my chest as I realized he didn't have a car. I tried to calm myself down, thinking that maybe he was waiting for someone or that his car had broken down somewhere nearby. But when I looked closer, I realized that his feet weren't touching the ground. That's right, his feet were hovering a few centimeters above the ground, as if he were floating in the air. My whole body was cold. Cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I blinked once, then again, but the horrifying scene didn't change. He started moving, not by walking, but by gliding lightly over the pump posts, his feet still not touching the ground. His movements were smooth and unnatural, like a ghost floating in space. I panicked and took a few steps back, almost knocking over my coffee on the counter. My heart was pounding in my chest. My breathing was rapid and heavy. I tried to scream, but my throat felt like it was choking me, unable to make sound. In a panic, I hurriedly ran to the back door of the gas station, hoping to escape that terrifying man. But when I opened the door, he was standing right in front of me, his face clearly visible under the dim light. His eyes were pitch black, deep like an endless black hole. His mouth curled into a crooked smile, revealing his white and sharp teeth like a wolf's. I screamed in horror, stepped back, and fell to the floor. He slowly bent down, his face getting closer to me, his deep black eyes staring into mine as if trying to suck my soul. A chill ran down my spine. I tried to crawl back to the cashier, my hands trembling as I pressed the emergency alarm button. The alarm siren rang out shrilly, breaking the terrifying silence. He suddenly stood up straight, his eyes still not leaving me, then slowly backed away and disappeared into the darkness like an illusion. I sat there panting, my heart pounding in my chest, cold sweat pouring down my face. When the police arrived, I told them everything in a state of panic. They checked the security cameras, but saw nothing but me falling to the floor and screaming in vain. There was no sign of that man. The next day, I quit my job. I could never go back to that gas station again. But what haunted me the most was not the horrifying scene of that night, but the black eyes that kept appearing in my dreams every night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those eyes staring at me, deep and cold like a bottomless abyss. And those eyes whispered in a ghostly voice, cold as the winter wind, "I'll be back soon." From that night on, I never worked the night shift anywhere again.